As I was growing up, my father was growing cotton. Cotton for export. My father was growing cotton for export. To support the cloth industry and for export. And when he would mobilize all of us, we were a big crowd in our family, young children, all of us to pick cotton. And when he would take that cotton to sell, peanuts. And yet, he wouldn't get much. And yet we toiled so much for the cotton. It's the same for other crops, which the new government which came promoted so that it can earn foreign currency. And it can also support former colonial colonies. Former countries, colonial former countries which had colonies in Africa. So, look at this. Here we are growing cotton instead of growing cowpeas, beans, and so on and so forth. And it's the same for tea growing areas, for coffee growing areas, and so on and so forth. Local people had already forgotten their traditional crops, the millets, because they are inferior. They are inferior. The millets are inferior. Cowpea is an inferior crop. And so what happens? We are growing cotton. We are being forced to grow cotton. Is that affecting the food security of the family? Yes. We grew with a lot of problems, especially food, because we are growing cotton. Huh? A legacy which the current government propagated from the colonial days. So now combine all these factors. Attitude, we don't want to eat what is ours. Restrictions, you cannot go as you want, you are restricted. You have to pay tax, your cow has to be taken for tax. You cannot trade anymore. You cannot go to Central Province for food, for example, and so on and so forth. Again, this exposed the people so much in terms of food security. In terms of food security. And so, it took a lot of energy to convince some of our people that our local food is good. Because up to the time I started supporting my mother to farm, most of the things which are grown by mother, including the chickens, they were not good enough. I remember one time, and listen, this is a true story. An agricultural officer came to our home and said, you know what? These indigenous chickens are not good. They are not good. Kill them or sell them and buy new breeds. But my mother said no. And that was the trend. That was the trend. Agricultural officer trained to get rid of the old, which is the traditional chicken, and get whatever is new. Because of that mindset, attitude, what is from outside, what is preached by the agricultural officers is a good thing. That is a good thing. And so, that's how many of our crops, local crops, disappeared. When I started working at the National Museums of Kenya, my first assignment was to go to Turkana, the southern part of Turkana, known as the land of the Gebotok. The Turkana have around 14 sub-clans, sub-communities. So it's one of them. I went to the Gebotok. That time, the Gebotok occupied the Tarkwell River. And they used to farm. They used to have melons. They are indigenous melon, not the modern one, because melon is African in origin. They used to have their indigenous melon. And I counted. I was a researcher. 1, 2, 3, 15 varieties of sorghum. There were varieties early maturing, which when children get hungry, go and just harvest the ear and eat, early maturing. There are those which were bird resistant because they can, birds sometimes can peck, especially the quillia. Quillia can peck on those. So when it settles on them, it's so soft. It just, the bird gives up and goes. There were types they were chewing like sugarcane, like this. You cut the stem and chew, very sweet, like sugarcane. There are those which had very solid heads, very traditional, from their ancestors. Go there today. All that is gone. All those varieties are gone. Because why? The agricultural extension and the mindset is, it's not good enough. This is not good enough. Let's grow maize, which does well once in a blue moon in such a place. Mindset. And when they are exposed, turn into rice, things which are not originally theirs, they turn into bread. They turn into things which are not grown there. And that buying, of course, if you buy instead of growing, what happens? You spend money. You are spending money. Again, you are exposing the family. Becomes vulnerable. Becomes vulnerable. The Gebotok example is just one, where within 20 years or so, we have lost all those varieties. The same stories everywhere in the country and in many parts of Africa because of that attitude. And because, not only because of the attitude of the farmer, but because of the attitude of governments and government agencies, because of the training. They are only trained in those, using those, export crops mainly. So, one of the attitudes, you can see this attitude in some of the traditional crops. For example, look at terere. You know terere? The terere. It's very nice, eh?
Yeah.
Now, if you go to a class of agricultural officers, they call it pigweed. Pigweed. If you look at textbooks, just look at that. We call it pigweed because that's a colonial name. It's pigweed, yet it's food. Look at their text, even up to the day. Terere is pigweed. Very sad. Very sad. Some of our fruits, there is a fruit I like so much, known as strychnos spinosa. It's like a big mango, and you can break it and make juice, very nice juice out of it. Look at textbooks. They call it the monkey orange. The monkey orange. Don't go far. Even that millet I was telling you, it's known as a bird millet. Bird, yeah, ndege. You know bird millet? Yeah, we call it bird millet. Attitude. Thoroko. Thoroko. What's the name for thoroko? Doroko, cow, pea, cow peas, cow pea, for cows. Attitude again. Tunaita nzo, pigeon peas. Pigeon peas. They are for pigeons. Why? Because the colonial masters, when they came, these were strange things. And it didn't matter to them. They gave them those names. Very funny names. So, one of the things we realized after that, is to work on people's minds. Work on people's minds. Can I now go to our last slide? Very quickly. This is how the Bantu came. Let's move. Let's move. Yeah. In many indigenous societies, wild food is part of the food system. Mushrooms, these flying termites, because they are seasonal, they fill a gap in terms of nutrients. There will come a time when it's only that which will be the source of protein. So the wild stuff is part of the food system. Now, one thing I forgot to mention. So as to grow coffee, cotton, tea, do you mix with other things? Can you grow coffee, cotton, majani, tea, with the beans? No. So a farmer who is growing cotton or tea, how is the biodiversity like? Very, very poor. Because that's a monocrop. That's a monocrop. But in my work in Kitui, there's one old lady I visited. I counted 1, 2, 3, 60, believe me or not, types of food in her farm. I've been working in Vihiga also. It's the same. You see this diversity, big biodiversity. Big diversity. So we were trained, and again, that's the training we got. Monocrop is good. You plant just one thing. That also exposes families. Because in traditional systems, there will always be a balanced diet. Kama githeri, a source of protein, a source of starch, a source of vitamins, and so on and so forth. Grow one crop like maize. Where will you get the vitamins? So let's look at this. In traditional systems, it's normally mixed cropping, multiple cropping. Vis-a-vis these hybrids people are bringing, and then they prescribe, you can only grow maize and maize alone. You see that?